Hi everyone, and thanks for being with me. This has been a remarkable day given the election in the United States. So I wanted to have a conversation about how you may have responded to the election or to Trump's win in particular. What does that mean to you, and how did you feel about Trump winning? So there are a number of people who watch my feed who I think are generally pretty excited about the fact that Trump has won, and I'm interested in what makes you feel excited about that. I'm also going to have a discussion with you about how I felt and why I felt the way that I did. Now, I had also just recently watched Kamala Harris's concession speech, and there are some interesting aspects of that I thought that needed to be noted. Number one is that as they panned across the crowd, there were many people who were crying, who had tears streaming down their faces, who were upset by what had just happened. So when I was reflecting on how I felt about this horrific experience, I must confess I felt a degree of sadness, a grief, if you like, a loss for something that I thought was important. When one thinks about it, who really cares what happens in the United States in relation to, because I live in Australia, so why is it that I would necessarily care about what may be happening in the United States? Well, the reality is, I do. I feel distressed that a person such as Donald Trump could be permitted to be in control of the most powerful nation on this planet. I find it almost abhorrent to consider that a man who has been found guilty of so many charges, felony charges, a man who has been found guilty or alleged guilty, I guess, by a civil court of raping a woman, a man who speaks in terms which are denigrating, that are humiliating, that are putting down other people, that a man who wants to be able to become a dictator, whether it be in one day or longer. A man who supports a program such as Project 2025, whereby it is obvious that they want to control a government. They want a government that controls the people, that are not necessarily looking after the best interests of their populace, but in fact are endeavouring to cement their power and their influence on a country simply for power's sake and power alone. I also think that the Democrats have failed to connect with ordinary, everyday, working class people, which used to be who the Democrats associated with or aligned with to a large extent. But that somehow has changed. They now have become elitist. And I think that to some extent that is the way they've been painted by the Republican Party. Whereas the Republican Party has become a demagogish party that has just wanted to focus on the cult that is Donald Trump. And that is unhealthy for any democracy, because over time, that democracy, if it's cultist in nature, will eventually fall. So why would I in Australia be concerned about all of this? One of the primary reasons I think for that concern is the impact that it's going to have on us. And I could list a whole host of areas whereby this may impact you and I, as remote as I might be. And that is, well, trade. So there will be a trade war against China. I think that's quite inevitable. There will be a withdrawal of funding for Ukraine, also inevitable. And one needs to think about the damage that that will do to the European alliances that sit around Ukraine, particularly NATO, and how that will embolden Putin to be able to look at other countries over which they can start to take control as well, such as Poland. There's many areas in which Trump, if he implements his policies, will affect many, many people. And there's even the sending people, rounding up people in the United States and who are of a different colour or a different religion, or who Trump and his colleagues simply see as different to them. There's also another important issue, I think, and that is the demise of democracy in the US. One of my concerns has been this continual assertion that the media are the enemy of the people. And what does that mean? Like, how does Trump make decisions about how to get rid of that particular enemy? Does he find ways to dispose of their licenses so that they can't, MSNBC and CNN, the Wall Street Journal and others cannot do what they do? What does it mean about journalism and the reporting of whatever might be happening in a Trump presidency that needs to be reported but won't be? Trump has, for the 9 years that he's been around, he's focused very much on fear and anger, and particularly in the last, over this campaign, on retribution. And I guess it's important that we don't buy into some of that as well. But we do keep him to account for all the things that he does. Not may do, but the actual things he does. So if Trump goes after immigrants, that needs to be reported. If he starts to find ways to lock up his enemies, of course that needs to be reported. If the trade war increases to an extent that it creates a recession, then clearly that needs to be reported. But at what point do we make him become accountable for any of those things? And if the press is unable to report them, and part of this issue that we have with regard to Trump is that the press, I believe, on both sides, has failed to make him accountable for some of the things that Trump has done. Now, there's a debate around AUKUS and whether or not that is something that we should be focused on. In my view, we shouldn't rely on the United States for that at all. But the United States has a whole lot of bases in Australia. Will we become more reliant on the United States in terms of those bases and the information that we provide through our gathering of satellite information and so forth? Are we going to become more reliant on them? Are they going to insist, in fact, that they become more influential in Australia as a result of those bases and the alliance that we have with them? So there's many things that we in Australia need to be cautious of in relation to the US. Let me know what you think when you watch, if you watch this later, in the comment section below. If you can, just add some comments that we can take up when I talk with Avery later on this afternoon. Please let me know. In the meantime, please remember to subscribe to my channel, ring the bell for further notifications.